Hey there, welcome to React Authentication with Inertia.js, Fortify, and Mental Models. In this course, you'll learn how to implement secure authentication in your Laravel app using Inertia.js with React, while leveraging Laravel Fortify for features like login, registration, and two-factor authentication. But that's not all. We will also explore how to use momentum models for smooth, seamless user experience, Ziggy for working with your roots in JavaScript, and add that extra bit of touch with profile photo cropping tool. Whether you're building from scratch or integrating into an existing project, this course will guide you every step of the way. Let's get started and take your app authentication to the next level. So here's a demo of the project we're going to be working on throughout this course. So for example, I can go ahead and create any user here with an email address here, and I can put any name here if I want to. Let's go ahead and just add a password and register. So now we're actually logged in already, and in here you can see we can go ahead, for example, and change our profile picture. So if you go in here, I could, for example, go ahead and change it to this, and we can crop and save it. And now it's automatically saved in here. I can also go ahead and change my name to, for example, Tilly Dakota, and it will go ahead and it will save that detail. We can also update the password along with enabling two-factor authentication, which will allow us to then log in using two-factor authentication. So let's go ahead and set up two-factor authentication. So first and foremost, I need to go ahead and confirm my password if I haven't already done it. And then I'm going to go into my Authenticator app now and set it up. So I'm going to scan the QR code, and then I'm just going to have to enter the digits here we get from this app. Just waiting for it to regenerate. And we're then going to put this in, and that should then enable it. There we go. So you can see we can show our recovery codes here. If I now go ahead and log out, let's get started with creating a new Laravel application, and we'll call this React Kit. And we want to use no starter kit for this. We want to use pest and initialize the GitHub repository as well. So while this is installing, all we have to do is essentially just decide what we want to use for our server. And I'm going to use PostgreSQL, and we're going to run the migrations later. And that's basically everything we need to get sorted to start out with creating the application. So let's head into the editor now, where we'll get started with installing and setting up Inertia from scratch. So inside here, I want to go ahead and modify the env file because my database configurations are not set up by default with the Laravel installer. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste this in here, and I'm going to change this database to be called React Kit. So for this course, we're going to be using PostgreSQL. However, if you want to use MySQL, that's fine as well. Just know that you may need to make a few adjustments to the migrations. I don't think it would be necessary, but just something to be aware of. But outside of that, that's basically everything we need here. So let's go ahead and create this table here in our table plus editor. Let's create a new table named React Kit. So if we go in here, we should be able to just head in here. It's an empty table. There's nothing going on right now. So the first thing we want to do is install Fortify. So to do that, let's head into our browser here. This should also work now. So let's go ahead and just check why there's an issue here. So we have the sessions table, which hasn't been set up. But before we run it, let's go ahead and just install Fortify. So we can get that on Laravel's website itself. In here, all we want to go ahead and do is compose require Laravel Fortify. And then we just want to say php artisan fortify install. So inside our create users table now, we have everything we need. So I'm going to go ahead and create a table string named avatar URL, and let's set that to nullable. So this is essentially just the ability now, so we can add the avatar in here. Outside of that, it will add everything from two-factor authentication to the email verified ad and the password in the table. So let's just go ahead and migrate this now. So now you can see this seems to work fine. However, we don't want to use, in this case, Blade, we want to use React. So let's go ahead and get started with installing the Inertia then. So Inertia.js we can just go ahead and install from the Inertia.js website. In here, we just need to go ahead and start out with installing the server-side part, which will then just go ahead and require that. We also want to update our root template here, which is going to be, in this case, in the primary folder inside views here. And in here, we just want to add in the inertia head and divide resources. So that's basically the beginning of it. So now we want to go ahead and set up the middleware. This will go ahead inside our app, HTTP, middleware, and there will be a handle inertia request. So in here we can basically share information and props which we can access on any component on any page through React.js, so we can just go ahead and access it in here. And we want to make sure that it is actually appended inside our with middleware class. In Laravel 10, this may be working differently for you. It would be inside a kernel file instead, around the HTTP folder. But for Laravel 11 and onwards, you would have to go into your bootstrap app.php file, and in here you can then go ahead and import this as well and append it to the web middleware. This is basically the easiest way to get started with it. So that's all we need to do from a backend perspective, at least for now. So let's head into the client side and see what we need to set up. We want to install Inertia.js React. We're not going to go by the basic template in here, but we are going to use something quite similar. So we will leave this one for now. But we do want to go ahead and set this up in invite as well. So in here, we want to go ahead and import, and we may have to install this React from Vite.js plugin React. So let's go ahead and install this. Just like that. And then inside plugins, we should just be able to say React. We want to go ahead inside our app.js folder, app.js file, and rename this here to a JSX file. So let's refactor this. In here, we want to make sure there's a JSX file loaded in. And inside our app.blade.php file, let's go ahead and import the fonts as well and the title part. And for the Vite part here, let's replace that with one that also loads in the components properly. And let's add in a font sans and lights there. So that's basically it for this part of the application. The only other thing we can do is, if you're working with apps with different languages, you may want to add in the local bit here. So that's basically everything for the app.blade.php file. The Vite.config.js file is not so as well. So let's go ahead and start rendering a component here. So we want to have a page here named pages here with home.jsx. And in here we just want to have a basic React component for now. Just saying hi. Alright, let's get started with actually rendering this so we can display a React component. So to start with, let's import our CSS file. Then we want to import, in this case, create root from React DOM client. And again, we want to import create Inertia app. So we want to install React DOM client as well, because that is a prerequisite to following along in this course. So with that sorted, the first thing we want to go ahead and do is go into here and say create Inertia app. And in here we want to pass through a few different options. So we want to have a resolve, and in here we want to have a name, const pages. In this case, it's going to equal to import meta.glob, and we just want to have in the pages.js file here, just like that. And then we want to go ahead and say return pages, and inside this array we want to have pages, name, and .jsx. So that's basically all we need inside the resolve part for now. And then we want to have a setup. And in here we want to have an element. We want to have app props. And we want to create root with elements and then render props in here. And we can also go ahead and pass through a title here. So in this case, let's go ahead and retrieve the name of the app. So inside our env file, down here at the bottom, write app name, we can basically retrieve that information and pass it through. So we want to have app name here. So let's go ahead and say const app name is going to be equal to import meta env write app name. So that will then generate the title, which we pass through in our Inertia app using a head component. So in this case, we can just go ahead and say head title home, and it will then go ahead and render the title here and the app name here. You can configure this as you wish, but that is the default way you would do it normally in a Laravel application. So let's go ahead and make sure we install React DOM properly, see if this works here. And then let's go ahead and run npm run dev. And I want to head into our web.php file. And in here we want to go ahead and say php artisan make controller home controller. We want this to be invocable, and we want to just pass through a home controller in here. So let's go ahead and import this. So in here, let's go ahead and say return Inertia home. And by that, now we should be able to head into the browser and just head into React kit.test. Let's go ahead and make sure we have the web.php file in here. Change this. It should just be slash. Currently it's not working, so let's see what the error is in here. Okay, so let's just make sure we got this properly sorted in here. I think we need to just change the setup in here to have an option is passed through. So let's see if that works. Perfect. But now we need to install Tailwind CSS, because right now we don't have any way to essentially style this home component. So let's get started with that now. I'm gonna go ahead and follow the Laravel guide, but we're gonna go ahead and change this around a little bit. So because the Laravel guide doesn't provide for React, it just provides for Vue. So we'll change this around. We can go ahead as well now and get everything inside our Tailwind config file. So if we head in there, so for content, we just want to add it like this instead. And for plugins, we want to require two different ones, Tailwind's form and typography. So let's go ahead and npm install both of them. And then let's head into our app.css file, which is located in here. And inside our app.css file, we just want to set this bit up here. And then we should just be able to say class name and say BG Blue 500. And it doesn't seem like we've gotten it fully installed, so let's go ahead and check what we may have missed. So we have the config file down here, we have the post.css file. Let's restart write. There we go. So it's just needed a restart. And so now we're essentially able to use Tailwind, and we're able to use as well React with it. So the next step would be to install headless UI, which is what we're going to be using for our React components throughout this course. So let's go ahead and install that. So with that sorted, we also want to go ahead and make sure we have the hero icons installed. Perfect. So now I should be able to access either of them. And for that now, let's go ahead into our page here and create a layout folder. And in here, we want to have layouts, and then we want to have default layout.jsx. Just like that. Alright, so let's take a look at how we can start out by creating the navigation bar before we get started on any of the authentication part. Alright, so inside this default layout component, we want to have a few things. First and foremost, we just want to import React. Then we want to go ahead and export default. In this case, we want to pass through a header and children. We want to return in here. And in here, we just want to return, in this case, we're going to have a nav bar on the top. And if there's a header, let's start out with that because it's quite quick to do. We want to go in here and return a header with a BG white and a shadow, bit of styling here, and then add in the header here. And otherwise, we're going to go to main children, and that's going to be everything for now. We want to go ahead and create a components and a navbar folder inside it. So let's head in here and create a components with a navbar folder. In here, I'm going to create a navbar.jsx. For now, let's just leave it like this. And here, I want to import a navbar. And then inside the navbar component, we want to have a fair few different things. So I'm actually going to go ahead and change this component around a bit. So we're going to have a function here instead. We're going to then export default navbar. We're going to have a const in here for mobile menu open and set mobile menu. And we're going to use state here, so we don't actually have to say React use state, we can just import use state instead. And then we're going to have a constant here for app name. We're going to have a const for props and a const for a menu reference, which is just going to be useRef. Import use page here in this case. And from React, we want to go ahead and import a few different things. So we want to go ahead in here and import use state, useRef, and we're also going to be using useEffect. So with that sorted, let's go ahead and return in here our navbar. And we're actually going to use a disclosure panel. Which we can import from headless UI. We're going to set that as a nav, though. So that will be rendered as a navbar. And then on top of that, let's go ahead and add in a few class names. We're going to have a BG gray 800 and a padding of 4. Then we want to have a flex with a justify between an item center. And then we want to have a disclosure dot button. And we want to add a few classes in here. Alright, so in here we want to have, in the disclosure button, we want to have a class name in here. We want to set in a text gray of 300, hover, text wide, focus, outline none, and an empty hidden. On top of that, let's go ahead and add this onto a new line. In here we also want an on click, and we're going to toggle menus. Let's go ahead and create an empty function in here that's called toggle menu. And in this button here, all we need is either A, if mobile menu is open. In that case, let's go ahead and put an X mark icon, and otherwise put in a bar3 icon. And we want to change the classes around here a bit from the autocomplete from Copilot, because it's not entirely accurate. So let's go ahead and change that around. This will provide us with a nice animation as well. And then below here, we want a link. In this case, we can just set this to slash and put in a class name here. Or, no, so actually no class name here, but we want to have a span in here with a class name. Span.text wide, font semi-bold, and a text large, extra large actually, and we want ML2. And we want app name in here to appear. So we can go ahead and take a look at how this would look like now. So let's take a look in the browser here. So we want to go ahead and first and foremost, before we take a look, go ahead and import off default layout. Go ahead and get rid of these classes here because we don't need that. And let's see what's going on here. Let's go ahead and restart, right? And also, let's go ahead and fix this issue here. So the issue we're seeing is because we need to add in byte React refresh. And there you go. Now we have this lovely part of the nav bar so far. But obviously we want to go ahead and make it look a bit more sophisticated. So let's head into our nav bar again. And then below this link here, we want to add a few more things. So to start with, let's go ahead in here and add a div here, which is going to be hidden, and an MD flex, and an MD ML16 or 6, sorry. And then we're going to have in here a navbar item, which is going to go to the home page. Right now we need to create that navbar item, so let's go ahead and do that. So this is quite a simple component here. It's just a link component here providing us with the children. So all we have to do now is import it. In here we're basically just getting an inertia link, putting in the link, and putting in the styling. And there we go. Now we have this home one here. And I think if we go ahead and make this a bit smaller, you can see we have this lovely one here, which doesn't work because of the toggle function not being set up. So let's leave that for now. All right, so with that sorted, we now need to go in and add a few other things. So we need to add things for user authentication later on, but we're going to be leaving that out for now. So all I really want to go ahead and do now is down here at the bottom, add in a disclosure panel. And in here we want to have it to be a few things. We want to have static, which we can go ahead and just leave like that. And then we want to have a class name in here with an MD hidden, overflow hidden, and a transitional duration 300. We want to have a reference here for menu ref. We want to have a style in here of height of 0. Transition, however, is going to be set to height 300 milliseconds, sorry, and then we're going to say ease in out. And then in here, we're just going to have another navbar item, which is going to have some spacing as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we could do this toggle function with some animation added as well. So we want to have a const menu, in this case as menu ref.current. We want to have an if mobile menu open. In that case, we want to go ahead and say menu style height is going to be equal to the menu scroll height pixel. Menu at event listener transitioned. And in here, we want to say if menu style height is not equal to 0 pixel, we want to set height to auto. And sorry, this is for use effect, so let's go ahead and change this around here to be a use effect. Copy this function in here. Just like that. And then we want to go ahead and say const toggle menu is going to instead be written like this. So we're going to still have a menu here, but instead we're going to say request animation with a callback here and set the height when we do the animation. So there we go. Now we have a nice, neat little animation here. And we can see we have this dashboard here. Later on, we're going to be adding custom user links as well, but for now we will leave that out because that requires more inertia customization. So what we want to go ahead and do now is go ahead and set Ziggy up, which will allow us to replace the roots inside the navbar with roots from Laravel, so we don't have to say /home or /login and so on. Alright, let's go ahead and install momentum models for our React application. So first and foremost, we want to just go ahead and require this with Composer. So if we go in here, all we need to do is just Composer require. Then we need to go down and essentially install this here with React as well. Other thing we want to go ahead and do in this case is we want to go ahead and set up the modals functionality as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so with momentum modals, what we can go ahead and do is inside our app.jsx file, we can go in here and we can say global this. In this case, we'll solve momentum model. And in this case, in here, we just want to have the ability to, just like we do down here where we get the pages, we just want to do this for the modals page here. So we just want to include any JSX file. And that's basically it for that. So with that sorted, we also want to go ahead in this case and go up and set up the Ziggy functionalities. So for that, we want to go ahead and find Ziggy Laravel. So in here, we can just go ahead and install this. And then all we need to do in here is just say global this Ziggy. And for now, I think that should do it. So let's go ahead and restart npm. I'm gonna go ahead inside here and let's go ahead and see if we can print out a root. Just for now, just to see what it looks like. So we go ahead and say use root, and in this case we need to go ahead and do this in our navbar later on. We need to actually just import root, sorry. And we can install Ziggy.js here as well. So what I want to go ahead and do in here, I want to just say root home. And let's go ahead and see what issue this has brought us. So for now, it looks like Ziggy is not defined in here, which is fine. So inside our application, we need to go into the app.blade.php. And in here, we need to apply the roots. So all we need to do is just say roots. And there you go. This is the home URL. And then we can just go ahead inside our application now. If we go into home.jsx, we can now go into a navbar and we can go ahead and say, in this case, we want this link here to go to root home. And let's go ahead and import this root. And let's go ahead and do the same thing in here. So instead we want to say root home. And let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Root home. And now if we click here, you can see that goes to the home page, and this does as well, which is perfect. So now we can essentially go ahead and pass through roots to applications based on whatever we have inside web.php here. So the way this is done is that Ziggy exposes our roots inside our application here. So if I move this down, you'll be able to see in here inside our head that we are exposing this inner script tag. So you can go ahead and see here there's a bunch of routes passed through in here, which is the one we're exposing. So what we want to go ahead and do now is actually go ahead inside our JS folder and create a modals folder and an auth folder. In here, I want to create a React register component for our app. So let's go ahead and just create a component here. But before we get started on that, I want to go ahead and create a modals component. So in here, we want to essentially use the headless UI component to create a modal, and also use the momentum modal functionality. So for now, I want to go ahead and export default a function called modal. In here, we want to pass through children and also props. We want to import React in here, of course. But we want to import a few different things. We want to import fragment, use state, and use effect. And then in here, we want to return, in this case, a transition root. And in here, we're not gonna have this exactly as this, but we are gonna have this as a fragment. But let's just leave this for now in here. And I want to go ahead and also set up the state now. So we want to have const show close and redirect, which is going to be set to use modal, which we import from momentum model. Then we want to go ahead in here and say const is open and set is open with a use state. And in the use state, we want to pass through the show method. And then we want to have a handle close and handle leaving functionality here, which is fairly simple, just borderline functionality here. So just setting it open to false, closing it, and then we can redirect as well when you leave it. So we want to show this when is open is set to true. We want to have after leave, and we want to say handle after leave. And then in here, we want to have a dialog. And that's going to be on close handling the close method as a div. And we're going to have a few classes in here. We're going to have in here a relative and a set10. Then we're going to have a transition.child. And in there, we're going to have as a fragment. And then we're going to have a few different transition properties. So let's go ahead and just add that. Just a basic transition with a dialog backdrop, which we can import from headless UI. And then we want to go in underneath the transition child, and we want to set up a modal. So we want a div in here with a fixed inset 0, and we want to set 10, width of screen, overflow Y auto. And then we want a flex, minimum height of full, items end, justify center P4 and small items center, just like that. And in this case, we do want to just change the classes around quickly here. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And then we just want another transition child in here along with the ability in here to have the dialog panel. So let's go ahead and import all of these just like that. And that's basically everything we need in here. So what we should be able to do is inside modals of register to create a register page. So we can go ahead now and create a controller in here, which we're going to name inside of register index controller. We're going to make this invocable. This will have now created a controller inside here, inside the auth directory. So in here, I want to just go ahead and have this as auth register and set a register index controller as the class we want to use here to render. Then we want to just say root as register. And in here, we just want to return a modal. Now, the way we would return a modal in here is we would call the inertia function, and then we would say modal, and we would say auth register, and then we need to pass through a base root. So that's basically the root behind the modal, which in this case we can set as the home root, just like that. So we passing the auth register as its own root, which will now always be under here. So always open this modal, and if you close the modal, or what will be behind the modal would be the base root, which will be the home directory in this case. So if we go ahead and refresh, let's go ahead and see what happens if we go to auth register. Nothing is happening. So for now, obviously, we don't have a modal set up. So we want to just go in here and put through any text really inside there. And we also want to go ahead and make sure we use the modal from our modal directory here. All right, so far it's not working, but if we're just saying hello world, and in here we should at least be able to see inside modals auth register. Let's go ahead and see what we set in here. We set the modals directory, needs to be inside the JS directory. And we're looking for JSX files. So let's go ahead and see if we missed anything here. Just double checking here. And let's go ahead and look in our components here. Let's close down the file here. So we have auth register, so the other thing we need to set up is inside our default layout, we need to set up the modal, which is the reason why it's not rendering. So let's go ahead and add in this here with the resolver as global this momentum modal. So inside our layout now, we should now be able to just see the work being done here. If we go ahead in here, just check the page. The model is appearing here, but it doesn't seem to be showing properly. So it is at least appearing now in the components list here. So let's go ahead and take a look in here. And we also want to make sure inside our register.jsx everything works fine there. So let's go ahead and check. So one of the things we're missing in here is an open method, which probably is one of the reasons why it's not showing. So we need to set open to isOpen. And furthermore, we also want to make sure in here that, let's go ahead and make sure we have everything in here. And then in here, inside the transition, here's fragment. We need to have in here our dialog panel with our props, and then our children in there. But we also need to have the transition child and everything before that. So let's go ahead and just make sure and see why this may not be working. If we could just replace the JSX here. Okay, that looks fine. So we also need to add the use effect in here, which we've forgotten about. So that's why it's not showing. So let's go ahead and say use effect set is open to show, and in here we want to have a dependency here with show. There we go. So now we can actually print stuff out in here, and you can see if I exit here, this goes back to the base root. If I go back, it opens up, and that basically just allows us to have a nice model here, which we can then manipulate.